Hey y'all, welcome to the Honesty Circle, the safe space to discuss growing in adulthood, mental health, faith, and all the things in between. It's your host, Sierra Elise, and I hope you're taking care of not only your mental and spiritual, but your emotional and physical health so you can be your best self this week. Today in the Honesty Circle, we will be talking about asking for help. If you're anything like me, you hate asking for help. And there are many reasons as to why it might be difficult for you to ask for help, such as pride, inability to trust, wanting to be in control, not wanting to admit you aren't capable, etc., etc. There's so many reasons as to why it might be difficult for you. But then there's also societal pressures, such as not wanting to be seen as weak. As Black men and women, we are trying to figure it out, just getting it on our own. And then also we forget as humans that we have limits, and we want to think that we are capable of everything and that there's nothing can stop us, and that kind of societal pressure as well. So I want to share a little bit as to different experiences that I opened up and did ask for help, and that completely changed me. It really affected and changed the trajectory of my life, I feel like. And they're big examples, but I think that it talks about the kind of depth of it. So in my personal life, I know I talked about it a little bit in past episodes, and while I was in college, I was going through a definitely difficult, hard time. I was battling depression. I had lost family member. Two of my sisters had moved away from North Carolina, and so that changed everything for me. I was also just juggling the stress of being a college student. Like I said, I was also battling depression at that time. And so this was kind of like my first experience of having to ask for a help in that regard. And I had to ask for help and actually go to therapy. Like I said, my mom is a therapist, so you would think that it would be so easy to ask for help and go to therapy, but it really was not easy. Finding someone I could trust, actually opening up on what was going on outside of this kind of things that I listed. There was more emotional things going on. And so having to go to somebody who I really didn't know if they were going to give me good advice, didn't know if I could fully trust them, but I just knew that I was at a point where I needed help and I could not figure out how to battle depression and kind of come up with tools that would help me on my own. And it's so hard because I always seen myself as someone who people come to. And I've always seen myself as being able to give other people really great advice. And so in that time, really having to check myself and figure out, okay, I can't do this on my own like I typically have done in the past. And so that's one example in which asking for help really changed my life. Therapy really helped me out in so many ways. And there's still tools that I use to this day that helped me, that I got in therapy from that therapy session in college. But also another way was at work. So I kind of talked about this, like I said, the last episode, and how I was in charge of a program at my job. And so it ended up being an additional responsibilities on top of my role, which it was quite difficult. And there were big deadlines coming up for my job and then also for the program. And so I just so stressed out and trying to figure out, okay, how can I get it all completed? At work, you don't ever want to think or seem as though you can't do your job well, because that's how people get fired and not doing well at their job. So I really had to go to my supervisor, shout out to my supervisor, because she has made it really easy to come to her when I do need help, and it being a safe space. And so I told my supervisor what was going on, how I needed help, and truly that opened the door for so many different other areas in which I've come to her asking for help at work, and really help in the sense of like all the stuff that needs to get done. Either it's not going to get done, or I just need an extra day, or small things like that. And so those are two big examples, but I found that those big examples might not have happened if I asked for help earlier. I mean, obviously can't go back and change things, but I try now to not let it build up to big ask, but then allow small asks on a daily basis to kind of help me out and feel confident in those bigger asks, if that makes sense. So when I think about asking for help, there are a few parts that I kind of want to break down further. So one, you have the what you're asking, you have the who you're asking, you then also have the vulnerability and the potential risk, and then the feelings that we associate with asking for help. And although this might not be something you consciously think about, but there is kind of like that risk assessment that is kind of taken subconsciously when you're asking for help and seeing, okay, like, do I ask this? Do I ask this person? Do I feel comfortable? And, sometimes these factors come in. It's like, oh, absolutely not. I'm not asking for help because can't trust the person. The risk is too high, and different things like that. But it's all very important. But one thing that I think really determines whether we say yes or no is that potential risk and the vulnerability aspect of it, which can be hard for many reasons. And so I want to go and break down a little further. So one, I want to talk about kind of what you're asking. This one's a little simple. So it's like what you need help with. Is it a task? Is it, advice? What is it that you actually are needing help with? And what does that actually look like for them to show up in the ask, if that makes sense as well? So it's not just about about what you're asking, it's like, what do you want the other person to also do in that time and in that moment? And then second, it's the who you're asking. So that's a lot of times the person that you trust or don't trust, that will or will not kind of do the ask that you have. And then you have the potential risk and the vulnerability aspect. So this part is kind of, do we think that they will say yes? Do we think they'll say no? Opening yourself up to letting people know that you aren't capable. So that's the vulnerability piece as well. And then the feelings that we associate it. So a lot of times we do connect negative feelings with asking for help. And it's because we've attached those feelings to it, which makes it difficult. And so those are kind of what they look like. And I want to continue to talk further in what each of these is, what they are, and how we can reframe it in our brains to become more comfortable asking for help. And so the what we're asking, kind of how I reframe that, I think with being more comfortable in asking for help is being very specific in your ask and what it is you need that other person to do. So say if it is like, let's use an example of like lifting a box that's too heavy for you. Hey, this box is too heavy, right? Just saying that this box is so heavy to someone doesn't specifically share that you would like them to help lift on the other side. So specific ask would look like, hey, this box seems a little heavy for me alone. Are you able to, stand on the left side and pick up that side, and I'll pick up this side and walk 3 feet over here. So being very specific in our ask, I think also helps us feel confident in what we're actually needing. Now, sometimes you don't know what you need, right? So it might be difficult to be that specific, but for the small daily ask, I think that's being specific in your ask will help in that aspect. The next thing is the who we're asking. So this one for me, I've started to realize, who you can and cannot trust, but then also looking at on the spiritual side of things is like asking God for help because he has no limits. And I found that when I've been very intentional in letting God know, like, hey, I don't have all the answers. I don't have the strength for it right now. I don't have the patience. Whatever it is, I do not feel like I do not have. Asking God to come in and fill in that gap, I think has been very pivotal for me. And so whether that's God's strength stepping in or God bringing someone to also step in. And so I think for me, I see that when I go to God first asking for help, that's also allowed me to feel confident in finding someone or him showing someone to me that I think would be able to help me in that time, which I think has been very helpful as well. So it's very important that who we're asking, a lot of times we have some established trust in it. And if we don't have established trust in that person, I think that's when leaning on God is very important, because who else are you going to lean on in that time if that's the only person? So like, say if it's someone at work, you are not able, like say you're out sick and you're not able to do that task, but the only person is maybe someone who you don't really trust. Maybe it's not your really closest friend in the office, but you need to ask that person because it needs to get done. And so trusting God and asking that person and trusting God, like, hey, that they will handle it, that they will figure it out, is another important part that I have found made it easier for me. Even if I don't trust the person, I trust God, and he's going to help figure it out in the end of the day. So that's that part. The next part that I want to go deeper about is the vulnerability and potential risk. Now, there's always going to be a risk that that person says no, that person doesn't complete it right, that, that they might talk bad about you when you're asking for help. But I think we have to remember that it's okay to have limits. It's okay to open yourself up a little bit, especially if it's a person that you've established some level of trust with. A lot of times they're not going to leave you hanging. And I've found that it's rare that the times in which I've asked for help, I've been left hanging. And which is why I try to build confidence in the small ask, because then it allows me to feel confident on the larger ask when it's something that's like could be life or death. Remember that it's okay to, like I said, it's okay to be not capable of everything. It's okay to open yourself up to other people. And that risk is always going to be there, but lean into it. Lean into the risk a little bit. The greatest rewards come from, the little bit of challenge or a little bit of uncertainty. So open yourself up to that. Accept that risk. Accept that vulnerability. It looks small in this area of ask, but that could also go a long way in the meaning of life in other areas in your life as well. The last part is kind of the feelings that we associate with it. I know that me personally, like, I don't want to seem incapable. I don't want to seem not smart, like I talked about in the last episode. I don't want to acknowledge that I don't know something. And so we have to make sure that the feelings that we're associating with asking for help are not negative ones. It's okay that we need help. We are humans. We are humans that have limits. We are humans that need community. We are humans that need each other. And so let's not lean into the societal way of thinking that we can do everything ourselves, that we only need ourselves, that we don't need anybody else, because you do need people. You need God, you need a community, and whatever that community looks like, whether it's your chosen family or your blood family, it's important. We need people around us to do this thing called life. And so don't think that you have to do it yourself. Don't feel alone. Find the people in your life that you can rely on, that you can trust, and that asking for help doesn't feel so bad and so negative. And so our goal this time right now is how can we just continue to reframe that? So go through each of these parts that I talked about, whether it's the what you're asking, who you're asking, the vulnerability, the risk, and the feelings that we associate that, and ask yourself, like, who can you trust? Who can you rely on in your life? And for what can you rely on them for? Because at work, I can rely on someone for work things, but I'm not relying on them for me personally for personal things. And so find the people that you trust, find the people that you can rely on, and start to lean on them a little bit. Lean on them a little bit. It's okay to open yourself up. It's okay to, like I said, not be perfect. I'm going to continue to reiterate that because I want you guys to get in your head. It's something that I have to constantly tell myself. It's okay to have limits. It's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to need other people around you to kind of get things done. You can't do everything yourself. We're not God. We're not meant to be figuring out everything and being in control of everything. So allow yourself to sit back, answer these questions for yourself, and figure out where it is that the negativity comes in for you for asking for help. Like I said, especially as Black men and women, we often carry the burden of life ourselves. And so ask for help, find who you can trust, so that way you don't feel like you have to do it on your own. All right, so that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for bearing with me. I've had a sinus thing going on this week, but I didn't want to miss out on an episode. So thank you so much for listening. C's 2 cents for this week is to reevaluate what asking for help means in your life. Go through and figure out what feelings that you have attached to it. figure out the vulnerability aspect that you might have difficulties with. Whatever part is difficult for you, identify that difficult part and then continue to work on it throughout your time this week. You can listen to me or not. That's just my 2 cents. Thank you so much for joining the Honest Circle this week. If you like anything that you heard today, please be sure to comment on Instagram, share with a friend, subscribe, and also follow us on Instagram at The Honesty Circle with the _ at the end to stay updated on Circle news. Thanks again for listening, and go conquer your week.